I logged in, and my heart stopped. My account balance, gone. Every last penny. It had been just a week since our big family reunion, a rare gathering that brought everyone together under one roof, cousins I hadn't seen in years, aunts and uncles laughing over old stories, and of course, my father, sitting at the head of the table with that familiar calm expression of his. Everything seemed normal at the time. We ate, we reminisced, and I even offered to chip in for a few shared expenses, thinking family should be about trust and care. I am Alex, 28, financially independent and careful with my money. My father, Richard, a man I had always admired for his practical wisdom, had recently retired and seemed more relaxed, even playful. But beneath his calm demeanor, there had always been something unpredictable about him, something I had brushed off as eccentricity. And now, staring at my empty bank account, I could no longer ignore it. I called him immediately. "Dad, what happened?" "The money, it's all gone." He shrugged, that same casual shrug he had perfected over decades. "We needed it, Alex. Don't worry about it." "Needed it?" My voice cracked with disbelief. "You mean, you took it? Why didn't you ask?" He smiled faintly, as if the answer were obvious. "Family first. You know how it is. We all contributed, in our way." My pulse raced. My mind raced faster. My father, the man I trusted most in the world, had just admitted to draining my account without warning. But there was something in his tone, a strange mixture of justification and calm, that suggested this wasn't just about money. It was about control, about reminding me of my place in the family hierarchy. I sat back in my chair, gripping my phone like it was the last anchor to reality. My younger sister, Clara, had been unusually quiet at the reunion, hovering near Dad, always ready with a smile or a joke. Could she have been in on this too? The thought made my stomach twist. Questions swirled in my head, each one darker than the last. Was this a one-time thing, or part of a pattern I hadn't noticed? Had my father manipulated more than just my finances? And the worst thought of all, if this was his idea of family first, what had I truly been a part of all these years? That evening, I tried to mask my unease, pretending everything was normal when I called my fiancé and friends. But inside, a quiet storm had begun to brew. I knew this betrayal was only the beginning, and that I had to be careful, deliberate. Watching my father with new eyes, I realized the game had changed. Trust, once automatic, now felt like a luxury I could no longer afford. The uneasy weight of suspicion settled over me like a shadow, one I knew would not lift until I discovered exactly how far this family loyalty would go, and how far I would go in return. The next few days after the reunion felt strange, almost surreal. I tried to go about my routine, but every notification, every email, every bank alert made my stomach twist. My account wasn't just empty, it had been cleaned out systematically, almost as if someone had known exactly what to take. The thought that my father could orchestrate something like this gnawed at me relentlessly. I started noticing little things that, in hindsight, had seemed harmless. Clara, my sister, had been unusually eager to help Dad with organizing family finances, always hovering near him when anyone mentioned money. She smiled too easily, laughed a little too loudly at his jokes, and seemed too relaxed whenever the topic of expenses came up. I couldn't tell if it was innocence or complicity, but a subtle unease settled over me whenever she was nearby. Then there were the secret calls. Dad had always been private with his phone, but now he started stepping into the garage, muttering half-sentences, and ending calls abruptly whenever I came near. The tone in his voice was casual, unbothered, but the weight behind it felt deliberate. Every time he hung up and returned, there was that same shrug, the faint smile, the air of someone who had pulled off something he knew I wouldn't understand immediately. And the lies, small but accumulating, started to surface. He would casually mention expenses from the reunion, we needed this or that, or it was all accounted for. But my careful tracking of my own accounts revealed discrepancies too significant to ignore. Payments I never authorized, withdrawals I didn't recognize, it all pointed to one conclusion: something more than a casual family expense had occurred. The emotional strain hit me harder than I expected. I had always trusted my family implicitly, believed in their honesty and fairness. But now, every interaction felt weighted, every smile and shrug carrying a hidden meaning. I found myself lying awake at night, running numbers, replaying conversations, and trying to make sense of what should have been simple, routine trust. I caught myself watching Dad, reading his expressions like they were a code I had to decipher. Every glance he shot my way seemed layered, every casual remark felt like a test. The more I looked, the more the unease grew. What had started as a shocking discovery, the drained account, was now morphing into a deep suspicion. Had this betrayal been carefully planned? Or was it a reckless impulse justified by his own skewed sense of necessity? By the end of the week, the tension had begun to eat at me. I realized I couldn't confront him blindly. I needed clarity, proof, and a plan. And though my heart ached with disbelief and anger, a quiet determination began to form. If this was a betrayal, I would uncover it fully, and I would make sure it didn't go unanswered. It hit me like a punch to the chest when I reviewed the transaction history again. This wasn't a small, impulsive withdrawal or a casual misunderstanding. Every large transfer, every payment I hadn't authorized, led back to the same pattern. My father, Richard, had systematically drained my account. And worse, it wasn't for bills, charity, or emergencies, it was for himself and the extended family, with casual justifications sprinkled in like sugar on poison. I remember staring at my screen, unable to breathe. The numbers blurred together, the sums staggering. Months of savings, earmarked for my apartment, my career plans, my future, it was all gone. And when I confronted him, my voice barely above a whisper, he repeated the same shrug and casual excuse: we needed it. Don't take it personally. Family comes first. The words were like acid. Family comes first? Was betrayal now synonymous with familial duty? My stomach twisted as disbelief gave way to a searing anger. My father, the man I had respected, trusted, and confided in, had crossed a line I never thought possible. Every laugh at the reunion, every toast, every warm hug, it all now felt like part of an elaborate ruse, a cover for his theft. Clara's role, too, started to make sense, or at least, the small hints I had noticed began to click. She had been unusually eager to handle the family finances, always hovering near Dad, always helping in ways that now looked calculated. Perhaps she had known, perhaps she had silently approved, or maybe she had even encouraged him. The thought made my heart pound and my mind spin. Could I have been this blind all along? I felt a mixture of heartbreak and rage, an emotional storm I hadn't anticipated. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was personal, a violation of trust so intimate it felt like a physical blow. I thought back to my childhood, to the lessons my father had preached about integrity and responsibility, lessons now rendered hollow by his actions. And yet, amidst the shock and fury, a dangerous clarity began to form. I couldn't undo what had been stolen, but I could expose it. I could make him face the consequences of his actions, show him that trust, once shattered, could be reclaimed with strategy and resolve. I sat back in my chair, hands shaking, eyes fixed on the empty numbers in my account. The storm had arrived, and I realized that the betrayal, though personal and deep, had awakened something inside me, a determination to fight back, not recklessly, but with precision. The question now was how. How would I confront a father I loved, a sister I didn't fully trust, and a family system that had allowed such deceit? The tension coiled inside me like a spring, waiting for the right moment to strike. One thing was certain, I would not let this betrayal stand. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the reunion, the casual smiles, the laughter, and most of all, my father's shrug. We needed it. The words echoed in my mind like a taunt, a challenge I couldn't ignore. Hurt and disbelief had consumed me all day, but now, as the quiet hours stretched on, something else began to grow, a fierce determination that replaced the ache. I got up and walked to my home office, staring at the empty account balance on my laptop. It wasn't just money, it was months, years of careful planning, dreams, and hard work. And it had been taken, without consent, without apology, under the guise of family. Anger burned hot in my chest, but it was paired with clarity. This wasn't just a personal attack, it was a test of my strength, my ability to reclaim control. A powerful realization struck me: the betrayal, as devastating as it was, didn't define me. I could choose to be the victim, or I could take deliberate steps to turn this injustice into my advantage. Every withdrawal, every casual justification, every silent smirk from Dad was a breadcrumb trail, and I was determined to follow it. I would gather the evidence, expose the lies, and restore what was mine, not recklessly, but with strategy and precision. I remembered all the times Dad had drilled lessons about responsibility, decision-making, and accountability. He had taught me well, and now those lessons became my armor. I realized that my power wasn't in money alone, it was in knowledge, in foresight, and in the ability to act with calm, calculated intent. The betrayal had revealed a side of him I hadn't seen before, but it had also revealed a side of me I hadn't fully recognized: resilient, sharp, and unyielding. By morning, the hurt had transformed into a quiet, simmering resolve. I would not confront him out of emotion alone. I would plan, observe, and strike in a way that left no room for excuses. Every call, every transaction, every lie would be accounted for. I would expose the truth not just for myself, but to demonstrate that betrayal, no matter how close the perpetrator, carries consequences. I glanced at a photo on my desk: Dad smiling at the reunion, surrounded by family. The image no longer invoked warmth, it fueled my determination. He had underestimated me, assumed that filial trust would keep me passive. But the storm that had begun inside me would not be ignored. I would rise, not just to reclaim what was lost, but to prove that betrayal, even by the closest person, could be met with unshakable strength. For the first time since discovering the theft, I felt a spark of control. Hurt had awakened me, but determination would guide me. And when the time came, I would ensure that every misdeed was brought into the light. The quiet, personal storm had begun, and I was ready to face it head-on. I didn't rush. That was the first and hardest decision I made. Dad still walked around like nothing had changed, calling relatives, joking about the reunion, acting like the drained account was a minor inconvenience I'd eventually get over. He thought time and blood ties would soften me. That assumption became my greatest advantage. Step 1 was documentation. I contacted my bank and requested full transaction logs, dates, IP addresses, authorization methods, everything. What came back made my stomach turn. The transfers hadn't been accidental. They were deliberate, spread out just enough to avoid triggering alerts. Someone had known exactly what they were doing. Someone who had access. Someone I trusted. Step 2 was silence. I didn't accuse him again. I didn't argue. I played the role he expected, the disappointed but obedient child. When he said, "We'll pay you back eventually," I nodded. When he added, "You're young, you'll recover," I forced a tight smile. Every word he spoke freely now was another thread I could pull later. Step 3 was observation. I started paying attention to patterns. Dad's sudden generosity toward extended family. Clara's new phone. A cousin's emergency loan that never sounded urgent. The money hadn't vanished, it had spread. Like roots underground, hidden but traceable if you knew where to look. Step 4 was verification. Quietly, carefully, I spoke to people outside the family. A financial advisor. A legal consultant. I didn't say, "My father stole from me." I said, "Someone accessed my account without consent." Their reactions told me everything I needed to know. What had happened wasn't just betrayal, it was actionable. Step 5 was the trap. I let Dad believe he was safe. I even hinted that I might let it go for the sake of peace. His shoulders relaxed after that. His calls became bolder. He started talking about future plans, expenses, even joked once, "See? Family money always comes back around." I memorized that sentence. The tension grew quietly. Every family dinner felt like sitting on a live wire. Dad still felt in control, confident, dismissive, untouchable. He had no idea that every move he made was being logged, every excuse catalogued, every shrug preserved like evidence in amber. I wasn't planning revenge out of rage anymore. This was precision. Timing. Consequence. By the end of the week, I had everything I needed: proof, professional backing, and a clear path forward. All that remained was choosing where to expose the truth, and how public the fallout would be. Dad thought the reunion was the end of it. He had no idea it was just the beginning. The climax didn't happen in a courtroom or on a dramatic stage. It happened at the place my father valued most, the family table. He had insisted on another family dinner, saying we needed to clear the air. The same relatives who had benefited from my drained account were invited: aunts, cousins, even Clara. Dad sat at the head, relaxed, confident, wearing the face of a man who believed the storm had passed. I arrived calm. Quiet. Prepared. Dinner began with small talk. Laughter. Plates clinking. Then Dad cleared his throat and looked at me. "Alex understands now," he said warmly. "Family helps family." That was my cue. I stood up, phone in hand, heart steady. "You're right, Dad. Family should help family." That's why I thought everyone deserved to see exactly how they were helped. I connected my phone to the TV. The screen lit up with bank statements, dates, amounts, authorization logs. Gasps rippled through the room. "This," I said evenly, "is my account. Drained 2 days after the reunion. Every transfer traced. Every withdrawal documented." Dad's smile stiffened. "You don't need to do this." "Oh, I do," I replied. "Because you told me you needed it. So I tracked where it went." Next slide. A transfer to my cousin. Another. An emergency loan to an uncle. Another. Clara's name appeared. Her face went pale. "You said it was for the family," I continued. "You didn't say you were redistributing my future without permission." The room erupted. Voices overlapping. Questions flying. Dad stood abruptly. "This is private." "No," I said quietly. "This was theft." That word landed like a gunshot. I revealed the final piece, the legal notice. Not filed yet. Just prepared. I spoke to professionals. What you did wasn't a misunderstanding. It was unauthorized access. Criminal. Silence crushed the room. Dad looked around, expecting support. He found none. The same relatives who had happily taken the money now avoided his eyes. Clara started crying. Someone muttered, "We didn't know it was like this." Dad's voice cracked for the first time. "I'm your father. And I was your child," I said. "That's why this hurts." I turned off the screen. "I'm giving you one option. Return every dollar. Or I let the law handle what family failed to." For the first time in my life, my father looked small. Not powerful. Not untouchable. Just exposed. That night, the family didn't leave laughing. They left divided, shaken, forced to confront the truth. And Dad, once so confident, sat alone, staring at the consequences of his own words. We needed it. The account was drained. So was his authority. The days after the dinner were quieter than I expected. Not peaceful, quiet in the way that tension lingers after a storm. Dad, once untouchable in our family, now moved with a careful caution, aware that his actions had been exposed to everyone who mattered. The relatives who had once smiled at his casual charm now avoided eye contact, subtly acknowledging the betrayal they had ignored for so long. I felt a strange mix of relief and satisfaction. Relief that justice, however personal and private, had been restored. Satisfaction in seeing that the balance of power had shifted, not through anger, shouting, or revenge alone, but through clarity, evidence, and the courage to confront what was hidden. Clara approached me one evening, her face pale. I didn't know it would go this far, she admitted, her voice trembling. I didn't need to say anything. Her complicity, passive or active, had become clear to her as well. Dad finally sat me down, his tone subdued. I misjudged things. I thought I was helping, but I see now I crossed the line. I nodded. It's not just about the money, Dad. It's about trust. That's harder to earn than anything else. From that day forward, the family dynamics subtly shifted. I was no longer just the obedient child or the quiet observer. I had earned respect, earned undeniable respect. My father, for all his past authority, now approached me differently, cautiously, aware that I had proven strength beyond anger or tears. The financial damage was reversed. The accounts were restored, apologies made, and while some relatives tried to downplay their involvement, the record of evidence ensured that the truth could never be denied. My independence was intact, and my sense of self-worth had strengthened, forged in the heat of betrayal and tempered by determination. And yet, the poetic justice lingered quietly, beautifully. The man who thought he could wield family loyalty as a weapon had lost the most valuable thing he ever held, unquestioned trust. His authority, once absolute, had been dismantled with precision, leaving only the bitter knowledge of his own misdeeds. To anyone watching this story, have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted most? Felt the sting of deceit from a loved one? Share your experiences in the comments. Sometimes talking about it is the first step toward reclaiming your own power. And if you found this story compelling, make sure to subscribe for more tales that show betrayal can be met with courage, strategy, and undeniable justice. Remember this, the hand that takes what isn't theirs often leaves behind more than just empty pockets. They leave the shattered illusion of power, while the rightful owner rises stronger than ever.